first journey in July 1910. The Mekong was flooded, swollen to as much as 18 meters above dry season levels. The high waters hid danger, massive jagged rocks beneath a surface pounded by strong currents.
And I'm curious, was the general in Laos on official military business, or was he just on his own personal quest?
N'est pas une mission militaire. Le roi du Laos était en discussion avec le Louvre à Paris pour préparer une exposition sur le trésor du roi du Laos. Et comme le général était à l'époque un des personnages français le plus important dans le sud de l'Indochine, il a pu négocier avec le roi du Laos que celui-ci lui prête une partie des belles pièces de son trésor.
The Louvre has no records to confirm the general was bringing treasures back for exhibition. But the secret British file states the treasures left Laos aboard La Grandière, and reports the Laotian royal family was deeply grieved by the removal of their national treasures. But the king felt powerless to protest to the colonial authority. De Bellier's rank and stature in occupied Laos may have influenced the royal family to relinquish their treasures, including statues of Buddha, precious artifacts with deep religious significance. Laos has been a Buddhist country since the 14th century. The removal of sacred artifacts would have caused great insult. Most of the lost treasures came from here, Luang Prabang, the Laotian center of Buddhism. At a local monastery, the monks conduct a special ceremony to protect the Fletchers from the perils of the Mekong.
Some of the Lao people believe that anyone removing religious artifacts will fall victim to a curse. Before he left, General de Bellier was warned about the conditions in the river. Maybe La Grandière sank because of their bad karma. That's a risk we don't want to take.
The hunt for La Grandière has unusual challenges, so the team are equipped for the unexpected. Their riverboat is loaded with 20 cases and half a ton of gear. It's their home and work base on the Mekong. The team's boat is strikingly similar to La Grandière. Both have long, thin hulls designed for the river's serpentine narrows, but the courses of rock and boulders still hold danger. The similarities may offer clues to help the Fletchers understand what happened to the general and the treasure.
I wonder if anybody's even considered the fact that maybe he had a mechanical problem, like the steering broke.
Could happen, right? Or you tap a rock and bend your rudder or something, and I mean, you're at the mercy of the current.
The vessel's mechanics are primitive and haven't changed in a century. The steering is a length of chain wrapped around a drum. The ends link back to the stern, where they're attached to opposite sides of the rudder to turn the ship.
It is a nice, simple system, but you know, it could fail any time. One bolt comes loose, and there you go.
Now, I'm assuming Grandier had logging chain like this for its steering, but the early steamboats actually had rope.
Rope?
Yeah. So you hear stories about the rope chafing on pulleys, or worse yet, you get a fire. Now you got a ship on fire and no way to steer, right?
Well, it's one thing to lose steering out in open water, but in here in this river, you got tight turns and currents and all sorts of things you got to avoid.
No, it's part of what makes me nervous. Steering would be absolutely critical, especially in flood when you got these giant whirlpools that'll throw you from one bank to the other.
The river's glassy surface hides numerous wrecks and masks very real dangers. The Fletchers must adapt diving techniques and call on a combined 40 years of experience to take on the might of the Mekong. The team use what Mike Fletcher learned on his scout. They develop a plan for diving in the racing currents where La Grandière and her treasures were lost. They will drop heavy weights instead of rocks on either side of any target.
Nice anchor. The local boatmen don't have traditional anchors, at least not the kind that we think of as North American or European anchors. So we actually had to go to a scrapyard and buy this old engine block to be the clump weight that Warren and I are going to dive on.
The Fletchers will attach guidelines to the clump weights. They will then travel hand over hand down the rope to the site they need to investigate. The ropes will be a lifeline in the river's treacherous currents.
Warren and I are just looking at the river. This is where we put our clump weight, so this is where ultimately we're going to end up if we can pull ourselves up to the weight. And the risk of getting pulled off the rope and sent down river where you can't see what's coming is what is really dangerous. Let's imagine that there's a tree sunk in the river and we're drifting like this and we can't see it. Suddenly you're stuck. You turn sideways, your mast is ripped off, you're tangled in fishnet. That's why we absolutely can't come off the line that we're holding in our hands.
Now they need to test their system. They enter the river near the cliff face, but quickly realize the currents are even worse below the surface.
I'm out here at the end of the line. The current's pretty strong out here. Yeah, it's really strong, but I'm managing to hold on. Over.
Diving here puts them in constant danger of being smashed into the surrounding boulders.
I just can't get over how much sand there is down here. Yeah, it's really bad. I'm not sure how we're gonna ever see anything down here.
Visibility is zero, but the test is a success. The weights and their guidelines held. Their system can be used for the investigation. But the swirling sand below the surface is another matter. But it should be manageable. The next step is to locate their target. The lost ship had a metal hull, and that fact leads the team to bring in British engineer Bob Hickson. Hickson has developed and worked with sophisticated metal detecting systems for more than 30 years.
This system's a unique system that I developed for myself to locate historic wrecks. It combines the GPS, an echo sounder and the magnetometer and displays all the data graphically on the computer.
Bob has used this magnetometer to find historic Spanish wrecks near Panama and 18th century shipwrecks off Britain. The team begin the search in the area Mike scouted. It's at the foot of the rapids, where some reports say La Grandière foundered. Bob plans to zero in on the steam-driven gunboat's metal hull and boiler. As the magnetometer is towed behind the boat, it displays any changes in the Earth's magnetic field caused by metal objects. La Grandière's metal hull and boiler would create a unique signature and help pinpoint the wreck's location. After a century on the bottom of the Mekong, La Grandière might be buried deep within the sand. Bob's expertise is the only way to find it.
This is saying,
Yeah, it's really jumping, eh? Wow.
there's no good. It shouldn't be like that. You're not being flat, you know.
Right.
That's no good at all.
The magnetometer is behaving oddly. The geology of the area is uncharted, and some rocks contain enough iron to disrupt Bob's readings, making locating the target nearly impossible.
Well, I think this here is solid iron. You look at it.
Bob suggests an easy test to determine if these rocks are affecting his magnetometer. He has Warren move the sensor away from the rocks. There's a huge fluctuation in the signal. The rocks are indeed magnetic and are strong enough to confuse Bob's system.
But it's caused by the rocks. So you'll never find it with the magnetometer.
It's a massive setback. Without the magnetometer, they have no way of knowing where to dive. So the Fletchers turned their attention to why the gunboat might have sunk.